This segment is brought to you by Jig Masters. Step up your game with high-quality performance jigs, spinner baits, buzz baits, and more from jigmasters.com. And always, when in doubt, get the jig out.
Welcome to the Bass, Kayak, and Beers podcast on the Paddle and Fin Network. On this podcast, we'll be talking about life and kayak fishing. Every week, we'll have a special guest, whether it's a tournament angler, a content creator, or just a regular guy or girl who just loves to go kayak fishing. So grab a cold beer, sit back, and enjoy the show. Bass, Kayak, and Beers is sponsored in part by Douglas Rod. Go to douglasoutdoors.com to check out their full lineup and locate your nearest authorized dealer.
Yak Gadget, made in America, based outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Yak Gadget offers all kinds of storage accessories, quick mount motor mounts, anchor systems, track mounted accessories, even paddles. Go to yakgadget.com and get your kayak decked out for your next trip out on the water.
The 153 Bait Company, based in Troy, Ohio, make everything from plastics to custom painted hard baits. Hook 'em hard and hook 'em often. All of our baits are made to order and all of our hard baits are hand painted to order. So go to the153anglers.com to place your order today.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bass, Kayak, and Beers segment on the Paddle and Fin podcast. Today we have another special guest. As always, we got Justin Largen from came up second place, I should say, from Virginia. Came up second place in the Bass Kayak Nation series at Lake Fork this past weekend. We were trying to have him on the live show on the Reel Down, but unfortunately we couldn't make it work. But we finally was able to contact Justin, and we're super stoked to have him on the Bass, Kayak, and Beer segment. We're going to be talking about his experience on the Bass Nation Kayak Series at Lake Fork, what worked for him, what got him into that second place, and his overall feelings on the tournament and Lake Fork as well. So we're going to bring in Justin Largen. So Justin, how are you doing, man?
I'm great, Armando. How are you?
Pretty good, man. Honored to have you on our show. Thank you for coming up and talking everything kayak fishing at Fork, man.
Yeah, the pleasure's all mine.
Thank you. So Justin, before we dive into the tournament, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do for a living? I know you're involved in photography, as we're talking about in the pre-recording. And also, how do you got eventually into kayak fishing and tournament fishing?
Yeah, so I'm kind of starting up a freelance photography gig. Something I got into sort of through fishing. I just see a lot of cool stuff while I'm out on the water, and I thought it'd be cool to photograph it with something better than the little smartphone camera. So I've started doing that, and that's I've enjoyed that. It's the last 6 months or so I've been working on that, spending a lot of time out in the woods. But as far as fishing, I've been doing it for about as long as I can remember. Like a lot of people, I guess my dad got me started fishing little cane pole and worm at farm ponds. But when I really got into it, I think I was about 12. I got into bass fishing. I had a little pontoon, I think it's Bass Pro Shops Pond Prowler was my first boat I got in college. And then I got into kayak fishing it was really Chad Hoover. I can't say I know him personally, but I saw some of his stuff on YouTube. Looked really cool fishing out of a kayak. And I gave it a shot, went out, got Wilderness Systems. I think it was a Commander was the first one that I had. And I enjoyed it. I mean, I literally I don't think I ever put that pond prowler back in the water after that. I liked the sort of the simplicity of it. You could throw it up on the car really quickly. Didn't have to lug around, big heavy trolling motor and battery. I could get it into all kinds of little places that I couldn't take the other boat. And I guess that was about 10 years ago or so. And I've fished out of a kayak since. I really enjoy that platform.
Yeah, it's interesting, like you said, and it goes hand in hand, I think, with the nature photography thing. I know I used to have, and I need to get it either fixed or buy a new one, but I used to have a DSLR, an Icon with a super zoom. It was excellent for taking pictures. Actually, my wife and I took a trip to Africa, and I bought the camera specifically for those safaris, and it took pretty good pictures for someone that's really doesn't know how to take pictures on this phone. I thought it was great. I went fishing, I dropped it, and it hasn't worked since then. But I love that about kayak fishing. I really need to get either another camera or get fixed, because I love taking pictures, whether it's, a hawk or an eagle or, beavers and Lake Fork full of alligators. You got any pictures from some cool alligators at Fork?
I was tempted. I saw some in practice, and then I actually did see a couple in tournament day. But I thought about it. I was like, nah, I need to stick with the fishing. It's I didn't want to risk going all the way back and lugging the camera out there. But I definitely was tempted.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, taking pictures while out there fishing, I think that's a nice bonus to it. So and definitely Chad Hoover, man, his influence over the growth of the kayak fishing community and the tournament thing, I mean, can't be understated. He's definitely, or overstated, is that what I should say? Yeah, that's probably what I should have said, overstated. Definitely has brought us, at least the popularity and the growth of this sport to another level with everything that he's done. So shout out to him. So and Justin, go ahead. I'm
sorry to cut you off.
No. Go ahead.
I like that he's just very open and honest with his information. I know, everybody now throws a whopper plopper. He's the first person that I saw online actually talking about it and telling people you got to try this. Before I saw any of the Bass Pros doing it, that he was putting that tip out there. A lot of little simple things I saw. I picked up from him stuff like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Like Senko's, reusing them, or your like creature baits, putting them on as a jig trailer, just stuff that I was like, wow, I'd save some money and do that. Stuff I wish I thought of. But a lot of little tips and tricks that I picked up from him just through his channel.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk a little bit, or let's talk a lot actually, about Lake Fork and the Bass Nation Kayak Series. How are you feeling about that second place?
I was thrilled. I haven't done too many of these big tournaments. I did one recently, a KBF event down in Florida on the Kissimmee chain, and it was a bomb for me. I finished way down at the bottom of the pack. So to come out and have a really good show in here, I was thrilled. It wasn't a great practice for me. I really wasn't sure how the tournament was going to go. My initial hope was just to get 5. But yeah, to end up second, the day could have been much worse. It was kind of a crazy up and down day for me.
Wow. So let's talk a little before we dive into more of the detail. Now that you mentioned that, what's your experience with both local tournaments and nationwide tournaments? Have you mentioned the Kissimmee chain in the KBF? Any other nationwide tournaments or local trails in Virginia that you've tried out?
I did one other KBF event. They do the state challenges where it's basically you have the entire month and 5 biggest fish for the month. I did one of those a couple of years back, and I did well in that one, and I enjoyed it. But it was kind of with the work schedule and everything. I didn't really do any other tournaments until this year. The KBF down in Kissimmee, that's the first sort of actual tournament where everybody shows up and is fishing the same venue at the same time, and it's a level playing field. That was really my first one. So this is my second, and it was my first one with bass. So again, I couldn't be happier with the finish.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And that's, it's interesting because you're just getting into the tournament scene, and that's a different monster than just fishing recreationally. You have time pressure, even though it's 8 hours, and it's still, when you're out there leisure, you don't look to say, hey, I need to get this amount of fish, this length by this time. So it does put a little bit of added pressure, plus all that many people fishing. For example, Lake Fork I think we were at 194, 96 anglers, something like that. I think it was not 196, yeah. Plus the boat traffic. There was multiple boat tournaments. I think it was a bass tournament, boat bass tournament there. I think there was a crappie tournament as well. And plus all the guided tours, which are booked full for spring because everybody wants to catch their new personal best. So it's a different monster. And for you to finish second, that's pretty impressive considering limited experience, we should say, on tournament scene. Now,
To be fair, I
right.
have done a couple of I fished a couple of events years back as a co-angler on like BFLs.
Oh, okay.
Back I guess that was before the FLW merger, and I did okay in a few of those. I got kind of discouraged with it. As a co-angler, you're at the mercy of the draw, and if you get a good draw, guy that's on fish, you do well, and if you don't, you you have a bad day, potentially a
Yeah.
bad day, and you don't really have any control, and that got frustrating for me. And then it just really depends. You can have a day where you're out there and just the style of fishing, like fishing boat docks or something real specific, or sight fishing. You're sitting out in the middle of the lake, and it's a different. And so that kind of turned me off to it. I told myself if I was going to get back into it, it'd be out of a boat. So the kayak format really works for me. It's low cost compared to owning a $50,000 bass rig. But I do spend a lot of time on the water, and I think I've had a mindset almost like it's definitely not the same as a tournament, but I've had kind of a tournament mindset. I've followed the pro trails for years, so I try to measure my day sort of how a tournament day would. I'd always be looking to get my 5 biggest, concentrate on getting 5 good bites, and try to weigh the bag and sort of, even though there's nobody else I'm really competing against, that mindset of competing against the fish and trying to put up as much weight or as much length as possible. So it's definitely different. It was definitely it was a big wake up call in Florida. I thought it was probably arrogant of me to think that I could just jump in and do well right out of the gate. But that tournament in Florida was definitely a wake up call. I realized how good these other fishermen out there are. There's a
Yeah,
lot of good
definitely.
guys on this trail and gals.
Definitely. So kudos to you, man, for putting up great numbers out there. Let's break it down a little bit. So what was your pre-fishing like? What were you targeting on pre-fishing, and what worked and what didn't work on pre-fishing for you?
Um, my hope was that the fish were going to be up shallow bedding. I love to fish that way. I've got a lot of experience doing that. So I was really hoping that it would kind of go that direction. But when I started on Tuesday, the water temps were, I think, mid 50s in the area where I launched. My plan was to kind of just get out of the wind. I'd never seen the lake before, so the winds were pretty strong all week. I think we had roughly 15-mile-an-hour winds. They were coming out of the south. My initial plan was, hopefully we could find some bedfish, but I wanted to have sort of a backup. I tried some moving baits. I caught one the first day on a chatterbait around a dock. I had another one slap it or spinnerbait that I missed, sort of back in a pocket, but I didn't really get anything good that first day. But the second day, I noticed the temperatures were climbing a little bit. I went back to Little Caney. That's where I started the first day. I don't know that I explored the entire creek, but I covered almost every inch of it. I figured out kind of which areas where it was definitely warmer as you went back towards that bridge, got further up to the back of the creek. So I decided that's where I needed to concentrate. And then by that second day, I did find a couple of fish back there. That would have been Wednesday. So I felt like I had a little something in there. I only set the hook once. I caught one off a bed just to kind of get an idea how big it was. I think that one was 17 inches. But that was it for Caney. I wanted to kind of explore different areas after that. I knew, okay, well, there's some fish back in there, but I wasn't sure what was going on the rest of the lake. And I'd heard it was, big temperature changes from one area to the next.
Yeah.
But Thursday was kind of a disaster day for me. I've fished out of Woodern Systems boats for to that point. The whole time I've been kayak fishing, and I think I got it in 2014. Wilderness Ride 115, and I'd beaten it up. I'd taken it a lot of rivers, smallmouth fishing. Had some hull damage that I've patched over the years. It started taking water when I was exploring a new area. I started to notice it not getting, it was getting wobbly. The stability was going, and I knew something wasn't right. So I paddled back to the launch, and I pumped probably 3 or 4 gallons of water out of the hull.
Wow.
So that was kind of worst case scenario for me. And my game plan shifted from exploring new places to, how am I going to fish? I didn't have, welding tools or anything to kind of do any repairs. I hadn't brought anything with me. So I decided to drive down into Dallas, and I found a place that basically a kayak dealer. It was a Mariner Sales.
Mariner Sales. I saw the post.
I met Duke down there, and I was just talking to him. He was showing me a couple different options. I'd been thinking about switching over to a pedal drive system. I heard there were big advantages in the wind, and there's actually been a number of days where fishing back home on the Potomac, the wind would get up, and I wouldn't even want to go out. It's just it's tough when you're a couple paddle strokes, pick the rod up, cast, put the rod down, a couple more paddle strokes. But Duke put me on an Outback, Hobie Outback. And I loved fishing out of that. Friday I went back into Caney. I figured I needed to get used to the boat, and just sort of explore. I knew another day, I figured the water temperature would climb a little bit. I wanted to see if there were any more fish up. And it had changed a lot in 2 days. I started seeing a lot more beds, a lot more fish cruising. And then I towards the end of the day, I found one that I estimated was between 5 and 8, on a bed. It was basically this, I guess I want to say it's alligator grass. There'd be some space between the grass and the bank, and I would pull the Mirage drive up and sort of use the paddle to slide the kayak over. And then right at the base of this dock, I found that fish. I thought about that fish all night. While we're sitting at the registration, I decided I was going to start on that fish. So I was excited, but that day, I actually had that fish bite. I pitched in just as I was finding fish. I wanted to see how aggressive they were, if they were catchable in the tournament, or if I thought I could make them bite the next day. That big fish was the only one that actually picked up the bait, and it was very hard for me not to set the hook on that fish. But I shook it off. So I felt like I could catch that fish, but I wasn't sure about any of the other fish that I'd found. I didn't want to spend too much time on them and have other people see where the beds were. The water was dirty. It was tough to see them. I didn't want to kind of tip my hand too much and have everybody that was, there were a bunch of bass boats, like you were saying, back in all these pockets, and a bunch of other kayakers. So I didn't spend too much time working any fish. So going into, that night, I really wasn't sure what would happen the next day, if I would be able to sort of camp on those fish and get them to bite. But it ended up working out for me.
That's pretty awesome. That going back to what you said about, throwing out there, especially when they're bed fishing, because that's very different from pre-spawn activity or post-spawn activities where they're always going to be feeding. When they're spawning, they're not feeding, they're defending their eggs. So it's kind of tricky to wear them out on practice and then expect to come back the next day and catch them again. Because you're not the only one who's probably found him. You're probably not the only ones who's pitching at him. And it comes to a point, and that happened to me on tournament, not to put any excuses, but where 2 beds that I found the previous day, they weren't there the next day. And I mentioned this on the live show, when I heard in the ramp after the tournament, one of the boat guys that was on the tournament got the female. So that wasn't there available by the time I went to that spot. And the other one had moved location from a nest to further back on the grass patches. So it's, it's one of those things where it's different. It's when you got a fish that you can tell because you can sight see them and it's big, and you're hoping that it's there tomorrow, but to sacrifice that opportunity to set the hook and land that fish takes a lot of will, to just decide, what,
12-incher, but to watch a big fish when your instinct is just there, it is, and set the hook and fight it. It's tough. But ironically, the next morning I got there, nobody else was on it. and I camped on that fish, wait until the sun was up enough to where I could see. And it actually wasn't there. And I ended up talking to another kayak fisherman who said that he had hooked it accidentally, I guess later on after I had left that spot. I guess that would have been Friday. So I'm not sure if that, if he caught it and it moved on, or if maybe somebody else got into it, maybe one of the bass boats later in the day after our off limits. But yeah, that fish wasn't there. So my morning, I was very optimistic going into the day, and then when that fish was gone, I was kind of, I didn't spin out, but I was starting to get a little nervous, because that was the one that I had been able to trick, that I knew I could get to bite. I did catch a good buck off that bed, but that big fish was it had moved on.
Yeah, and then the fact that so many, especially in Lake Fork now, it's well, it hasn't been a secret, but it's really been blown up and put under immense pressure. You wonder what the future, short term and long term, for Lake Fork is gonna be, because at some point it's gonna have to go through a cycle where it's no longer the Lake Fork that we all know and loved. Just because, especially on spawning season, those fish get, think about it. If you're at work or you're home and you get hit on half-ounce tungsten weight on your head every day, 10 times a day, you're gonna get, there's a point where I think it's gonna affect the lake, and it is what it is. I mean, you can't be a hypocrite. Can't say that I love doing that and then expect everybody else not to do it just for my own benefit. Yeah. But it's definitely to see what Lake Fork's going to be 10 years from now. I mean, I know that's really further down, but it eventually, I'm assuming, it will take a toll, and then then people stop going or at least that many people stop going, and then it'll rebound and stuff like that. We've seen it on other lakes as well. But anyway, so let's go into your tournament day. We talked about that fish. How was tournament day for you? Where did you start it off? What was working? What wasn't working? Where did you move on to? And what was the reasoning behind the spots that you picked?
Sure. I started on that big fish. While I was in that grass waiting, I had seen some other fish moving around in that area on the inside of the grass. I was just skipping a little Senko around, kind of killing time. Hooked one 14 inches. And while I was trying to get my identifier and everything all set up, I took my hand off the fish and it flopped back in the lake. It was only 14 inches, but at that point I had nothing. So I was, I was trying not to spin out with that too. And then when I had that one that basically I wasn't able to count, and then the big fish that was gone, I was really starting to worry. But I switched. I kind of went around the dock and to the other side, and I was actually able to see the buck from there. That was my first bite, or first scoreable one anyway. It was 18 and a half inches. I felt a little bit better after catching that one. And I just kind of cruised the rest of that pocket, just went basically doing the same thing I had been on the inside of that grass. There were a number of small bucks in there. And at that point, I figured it better to just try and catch, put some fish in the boat. So I spent some time, ended up catching some 14 and 15-inch fish. I didn't realize it in practice, but the cell reception for me was really bad in there. Yeah. I was not able to post any of the fish. So I was putting them in the little live well feature. So I ended up not posting or not submitting any of the smaller fish. But I guess I'll circle back to that. But I pushed all the way back into the back of the cove, caught a couple of smaller fish, but I was still, didn't have much of a bag at that point. As I was making my way back around the other side of that cove, I ran across an area where there was a couple of big bass on a bed. It was up shallow. It was the only bed that I found that wasn't in that grass. There were a couple of, I think they were hard, maybe cypress tree that they were near. But I pitched in and missed a fish. and I could tell it was big. I didn't really get a hook in it on the first set. I made a few more casts. I was really having to work a lot of the fish. I didn't have anything bite on the first drop. You really had to aggravate them. But I eventually got that fish, maybe 6 or 7 casts. The fish hit, and I stuck it good. I had it on maybe 10 seconds. It went under the boat. It went the other side of the boat. About the time I thought it would have tired and I would have been able to get it in, it just popped off. Initially, I thought the line broke, but it just hook popped out. And I knew it was a big fish just from how hard it was pulling. It never jumped. I didn't get a look at it out of the water, but I could tell it was 20 plus inches. I knew it was a big bass. So I was starting to spin out a little bit again, and I don't know if you've seen the Gerald Swindle, or if you've heard him talk about he's got like a little sort of motivational speech that he does talking about
I've seen that.
Attitude. He's got the little bracelets. I was looking at my bracelet, don't spin out, don't spin out. I made a couple more casts into the bed because I thought I could still see. I wasn't sure if I'd hook the buck or the female, but another fish bit. I think it was whichever one I hadn't hooked. I got a hook in that one, and it popped off right away too. So I was just in like meltdown mode. I backed off a little bit and just sort of sat and watched. And about that time, the camera boat came by, and they asked me how I was doing. I was like, I got a couple, but I just lost a big one. While I was talking to them, I saw the fish pull back up, and I switched baits. I picked up sort of a little finesse bait, a little what's it called, a baby D-bomb that Missile Baits makes, and pitched that in there. And on second cast, the same fish hit it a third time, and I was able to land it. The camera guys got some pictures of it, so I went from kind of being, on the verge of freaking out to really, really stoked, and that really turned my day around. From there, I had a lot of confidence, and the day got better.
How big was that fish? That one
was 21 on the nose. When it jumped, I would have sworn it was bigger. It weighed, I think, 5.5.
Look at that.
That's the one.
For those watching on YouTube or Facebook, we're posting the picture so you can see it on. That's a tank.
And that really, that turned the day around to have that fish come back and eat. I had another little cut. There was somebody else that had started on it. It was just a tiny little, I guess, pocket off sort of the main little cove that I was in, and it was chock full of that grass. Somebody else had started on it, so I hadn't gone in there initially. But he was fishing from outside of it. He was casting, I think, working the grass itself. At least that's what it looked like to me. He may have, been trying to sight fish too. But at the point that I caught that fish, he had moved on. He wasn't there. So I decided to go back in that little pocket. I had seen several fish on beds 2 days before. No, I take it back. That would have been Friday. And when I went back in there, there were a handful of fish up on beds. I think there were a couple 15, 16 inches in there. So I upgraded. I think I got rid of all the 14-inch fish, and I was feeling good. The sun was coming up a little better. I could see a little bit better. And then on my way out of the pocket, right on the point, there was one that looked like it was maybe 17, 18 inches, a buck. And while I was working that buck, a big female came in. I actually got that female to pick up a lizard. It's really light bite. It wasn't on my sort of heavier setup. I think I was using a 7-foot medium heavy with maybe 15-pound line, which scared me around that grass.
Yeah.
But she stayed on, and that was actually my biggest fish of the day. And then I was really feeling it at that point. That one was 21 and 21 and a quarter, I think.
Yep.
But it was a freak looking fish, just a football. It weighed, I want to say it was 7 1/4, if I remember right, on my boga grip. But that one, when I caught that one, I started thinking, okay, I've got two big ones. I've got the 18. I've got a chance to have a really good bag here. And I was I didn't have anything left at that point back in that pocket. I had found some fish further in, like going back further towards that that bridge. So I decided to run back to those. I found a few more fish. I guess I started on the middle spot. There was some fish further away. There was some fish closer towards the ramp. I opted to go further. I think at that point it was around 12, maybe 12:30. So I decided to go for the fish that were furthest away first, and then work my way back. I got to that spot, and there were, I think, 5 kayaks in this tiny little area. I kind of waited for a minute. I was, I didn't want to encroach on those guys, but I knew there were at least 2. I knew where 2 beds were back in there. I knew one was a 17, which I think would have helped me a little bit, and the other one I thought was maybe in the 20-inch range. And I talked to one of the guys who was out near the mouth, but I asked if he'd mind if I went in behind him. I'd found a couple bedfish, and it was a real cordial interaction. It wasn't nasty like you see some of the bass boat deals. But he basically said, "Hey, I've been in here all day. I've got a good bag. I got a good chance." So I let him have them, and it actually worked out in my favor. I headed back towards those fish that I'd found closer to the ramp. I had figured that some other people would have found those fish and they would have been caught already. But when I got there, they weren't. I had maybe half an hour. There was still a little bit more time, but because I couldn't upload any of my fish, just the reception was so bad, I knew I was going to have to potentially drive all the way to the I guess the site where we had the registration, the pre-tournament meeting, to guarantee. I knew that other side of the lake had better service, so I was going to have to sacrifice some fishing time just to make sure my fish counted. So I ran to that pocket and found 2 of the beds that still had fish on them. They actually ended up being bigger than I thought. I was guessing they were going to be 15, 16. Both of them were 18 and a half. It did take 5 to 10 minutes at least for each fish. But it was, my last cast was probably 145. I caught that last 18 and a half incher. And at that point, I didn't have anything else found. There were no other beds that I could run to where I felt like I could improve. And I felt like I just needed to protect what I have, get back to the ramp as quick as I could, and make sure I got everything to count. So that's what I did. And at that point I was loving the Mirage drive. I popped that thing back in, and as hard as I could pedal, went back to the ramp. And then I think it was about the time I hit the bridge over I guess it's the West Fork. I started to get some bars, and I was able to upload those fish. But yeah, it was a very up and down day, but it ended up working out. It was kind of it could have been a disaster day for me if I'd spun out and gotten frustrated. But I kind of kept my head, and stuff worked out.
Easier said than done, by the way. So I've been there, and thankfully I've never gotten to a place where I kind of rage quit or anything like that. I've always been able to maintain, composure and just, see it through. And for the most part, even if I don't win any money, I usually at least get one fish. And that's easier said than done, man. Because there's days that you just want to rage quit. You want to throw everything the bottom of the lake and just rage quit and just get it done because it's that kind of day. But I mean, you had everything going against you when you look at it. Now, your fishing platform the day before the tournament is unusable. Off chance you drive 2 hours from Lake Fort to get to Mariner Sales. They hook you up. Shout out to Mariner Sales, by the way. Yeah, they save a plug into this podcast. Definitely. For doing what they did, So, and we'll thank them. I know you're going to thank them at the end, but shout out to them. And I know you went back to get some readjustments on it, and were kind enough to help you out. So, I mean, big shout out to Mariner Sales and whoever, was helping you there, because that's pretty awesome. That saved you. That got you from losing 230 what is it, $250 on
I
a
think it was
tournament that you
250, yeah.
$250 you weren't able to fish, to actually making, how much was you winning? 8,000, something like that? Or
I want to say it was 4 range. I
second place?
honestly,
I thought it was more. Okay, my bad.
I could be wrong, but I thought it was 4 and change.
Could be. I thought it'd be more. But anyways, regardless, turns it around completely for you.
Oh yeah.
Going from, like I said, losing 250 to actually making thousands of dollars on a tournament. So great stuff, man. And kudos to you for hanging in there. Because at that point, you probably just, after all you gone through on pre-fishing did not go as good as it could have been. It was disappointment pre-fishing from what you're telling me. Your boat is no longer usable. You have to drive, get another one. You're probably tired emotionally and physically. Now you get on the water. You have all these fish that are no longer there when pre-fishing, and other ones that mishooked it or spitted the hook, whatever it was, whether it was your fault or not. It's still frustrating for you to hang in there and manage second place. That's pretty amazing. I wanted to touch on something that you said, and if I'm going to nitpick, and again, this is a podcast, so I have to be objective and give my opinion. Now, I love what they did. I love what Patrick Malone, I always get his first name confused, but Malone, I think it was a tournament director, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and Dwayne Valley also with Tourney X. Great job, amazing job, super happy. The only thing that I would have rather have, especially now that daylight saving time, is I would have liked at least 60 minutes to post pictures after lines out, because it was a race. Like, I was like, do I keep fishing or do I just get to the boat ramp, try to find signals? So on my way back to the boat ramp, I figured I know the lake pretty well, so I know in the middle of the lake there is signal. So instead of going to the boat ramp, I decided to go to the main lake. But it's that hard decision when you fish in a spot that might be hot, and you're like what happened to you and Guillermo Gonzalez. I know, same situation. I saw him on the ramp. He just dragged his running up the ramp, dragged his kayak. I think he broke the keel on it, and just got on his car. He told me, "Watch my kayak." Just got on his car and drive to get signal, and then come back, because he only had 30 minutes. So if you're in a spot that's like, I don't know, especially if you don't have a motor like you didn't, and Nate Gloria did it, you have to make that tough decision. Do I go start heading back to the ramp, 30 minutes prior, to make sure I get on time to find signal? So with daylight saving time, I would have liked it to be a little bit more time to upload those pictures. And again, I'm nitpicking, not criticizing. I understand the job that both Malone and Dwayne did was amazing, and I have no complaints. But that's the only thing that I would like. I also understand their situation. It's 196 anglers, and I think 600 and some pictures, and that's only the fish that counted. So if you count people that uploaded multiple pictures because their first fish was 12, 14 inches, and then they upgraded, easily talking about 700. Maybe I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know if when it says fish caught, it only takes account the fish that are they said all the fish that were uploaded, only the 5 fish for each one. So regardless, it's a tall task to ask for them to, go through that many pictures. But I think it would have had a better score in the tournament. Maybe not necessarily for you, because that would have maybe bumped you out, because it really only took anybody in the top 10 that caught one more 18-incher, which is more than doable on Lake Fork. Like, it's not like other lakes that you're like, catching an 18-incher is, a Hail Mary or, a needle in a haystack. Not Lake Fork. You caught a big one in Lake Fork. It's pretty, you can I'm not going to say easily, but the chances of you catching an 18-incher to bump you from maybe 10th to first place, that reality was very likely. I'm surprised the score wasn't in the top score wasn't in the triple digits.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Yeah. So for you, when you saw Did you saw Nate Gloria, who led most of the tournament? Did you saw his fish count before they took it out? Did you knew he was already at 98 inches?
I didn't. I was blind to what anybody had in my head.
Okay.
You know, I knew last year. I think it was Cody Milton had over 100.
Yeah, I think
I want to say there were two people that were over 100 inches, and so in my head, I was thinking that's what it's going to take to win this thing.
Yeah.
So I was pretty sure already I didn't have enough to win it. But you know, I had no idea. I figured it would. I was trying to do the math in my head, and I figured I was 95, 96, somewhere in there. And I figured that was going to be a good finish, but I wasn't sure, you know, how good it was. And
what was your hope?
Guys.
What was your hope?
I was hoping to get a check at that point. I was hoping to get a check. I was hoping. I mean, I would have. I liked those trophies. I was really hoping I was going to get one of those trophies that you know, I was eyeballing those the night before. But you know, a top 10 I'd have been happy with. And then I talked to a couple guys that were basically, you know, at the ramp, you know, loading everything up the same time that I was. They'd gone in a little early. They'd been able to get reception, and they told me somebody had 98 or about that. So at that point, I knew it was not likely I was going to win if that information was accurate. But I still felt like it was a good bag. You know, based on how the day could have gone, I was pretty proud of it. So
yeah, definitely hard part.
I was driving probably faster than I should down some of those back roads to make sure I got to reception area and got those things counted. I was camping, tent camping in Hideaway Harbor. I think it was 13, 14 minutes maybe from there to get to the actual what is it, Lake Fork Marina and motel. I knew I'd be able to get reception there, and then I also knew that I could, you know, track down the tournament director. Worst case scenario, if I wasn't able to get him uploaded, as long as I think we had to get to him by 2:40, you said, or 2:45.
Yeah, 2:45.
So I was
30 minutes after lines out. Yeah.
I got there with a couple minutes to spare, but I was really glad in hindsight that I left when I did. That would have been really hard if I had, you know, stuck around another 15, 20 minutes trying to find another fish and then pedal back in and end up showing up at, you know, 3 o'clock and can't count any of my fish, and then realize where I would have done. I'm really glad I made that decision to make that run when I did.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's hard because at that point you're thinking, man, an 18-incher it's gonna make it or break it for me. You know, it's gonna bump me down 2 or 3 spots if I don't catch it, or if somebody else catches it, or if you don't catch it, or if you catch it, it can bump you up to first place. So it's, you know, it's one of the game within the game, you know, kind of thing. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but it really is. You know, it factors into your tournament anglers. Not only catching 5 fish, or you know, it's all those other little nuances of, you know, being able to follow the rules and play it in a way that you give yourself as much time in the water, but it's all the you know, as much time as you need to upload those fish and not be caught high and dry, you know. So kudos to you, man. Again, that's a hard part to win, and it has to feel amazing to accomplish that. Were you surprised that you ended up in second place? As far as, you know, not surprised that you didn't win first place, but surprised that you got as high up as second place once you knew what your score was, you know, after you were done fishing?
Yeah, I was. I still hadn't seen any of the scores. I actually called my mom. I knew she was going to be checking throughout the day, and I wanted to let her know that I hadn't zeroed, because at that point I hadn't uploaded anything. So it's like, hey, I actually had a pretty good day. But you know, I was asking if she remembered what any of the weights were, the top weights, and you know, she knew people had in the 90s, but I really didn't know where I was going to fall. I wasn't sure if I was going to get that text and kind of the invite to the award ceremony. And then even when I got it, I didn't know if I was going to be, you know, second or third. I was 99% sure I hadn't won. But you know, I was at that point, I would have been happy with third. and in my head, I'm thinking, well, maybe they invited, the top 5, the top 10, who knows? I know they said it was going to be top 3, but I really didn't know. And then when he read off, read off the third place weight, and it was 96. I was ecstatic. I mean, on the one hand, I could look at it and say, hey, if it had been a quarter inch, if I'd had a half inch more, I know Nate had a 22 incher, so he'd have won if we had tied. But I could look at it and say if I'd have had a half inch more, it'd have been a bigger trophy, and that would have been great. But I don't think I could have asked for any better than second in that one. I mean, I was thrilled to have it turn out the way it did.
How did it feel for you going? I know you just mentioned you were thrilled, but when you put it now in perspective, your second kind of like elite or tournament or national tournament, we should say, went horrible at the first one. Kind of what your own words, it went, or at least it didn't went good on the first one. This is the second one. It's it's not the Tournament of Champions. It's not the what do you call it? Then I forgot the term for the KBF. I know TOC is Hobie, National Championships, KBF, and the Bassmaster Classic. It's not any of the top 3, but it's still a Bass Nation Kayak Series event, and it is at legendary Lake Fork. When you put that in perspective, everything of what happened in the past, what happened during the tournament, pre-fishing, your previous national tournament, and you're sitting there now taking a picture with your second place. How did it feel?
Oh, I was ecstatic. I mean, I was tearing up as I'm driving back away from the ceremony back to the.
I don't blame you, man.
Back to the camp. I was like, I mean, just the roller coaster of that day and kind of the way the week had gone. It was awesome, and it gave me a lot of confidence. The KBF tournament was kind of a wake up call. And I started looking at some more regional tournaments. I was like, hey, maybe I need to, there's some really good local tournaments, kind of up in the, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia. And I started looking at those and thinking, okay, maybe I need to fish some of those this year. Maybe not worry so much about these national ones. Maybe take a step back a little bit. And doing well in this one gave me confidence to that I can compete kind of at that high level. So I still plan to fish some of those local tournaments too. But I'm stoked about some of the upcoming ones. I really like fishing shallow grass. The KBF trail's coming to the Potomac River in May, so that's going to be, that's basically what I consider my home water. So I'm really excited about that one. And I'm planning to go on at least a couple of them. I think there's a couple of I want to say Hobie tournaments. What is it? There's one on the Susquehanna. I think there's one on the Mississippi. Excited about those. I'm just trying to look at the schedule and kind of figure out which ones I'm going to make. But it's kind of giving me the confidence to travel and fish a couple more of these high level events and kind of see how the cards fall.
Yeah, you're big time now.
We'll see. I got to back it up.
When you look at, top anglers, Christine Fisher. By the way, if anybody has seen Christine Fisher's latest post or video on YouTube of her skipping at Lake Fork, by God, go check it out. That was amazing. I was mesmerized watching her YouTube video just before the recording of her just skipping on a light setup and grabbing, hooking into big spawning bass. That was pretty. Shout out to her. I mean, the skills that woman has for skipping, legendary. That is legendary skills right there, and it's one of the main reasons why she's top angler in one of the top anglers in the nation. So when you look at Christine Fisher, Russ Snyder, Jody Quinn, and don't feel the need to be humble at all. Your honest opinion, where do you see yourself? Because I know you're not known nationally. This is only your second national event, but you have fished for, like you said, for most of your adult life, or all your adult life, since you were 12. You have fished on a small craft for a decade or more than a decade now, if I understood that correctly. You know how good of a fisherman you are, even if we don't know if we're just getting to find out. How do you stack yourself? How do you feel you rank yourself as compared to those people that are, considered some of the top anglers in the world?
This week I did well. I'm really happy with the finish, but I don't think I'm at that level yet. I've got a couple good finishes, but if you look at their track record, the number of tournaments that they've fished and how consistent they are, it's amazing. The number of wins, top fives, top tens that they have. I've got a lot of respect for everybody that you mentioned, and there's a lot of guys out there that have demonstrated that it's not a fluke. So for me to consider myself kind of in that crowd, I've got to do a little more. I got to fish a few more of these and put up good finishes. This one just really set up great for me. It's sight fishing, something I love to do. It's kind of a bucket list lake. Lake Fork's one of the ones I've read about for years, and I've wanted to fish. It was a great week for me, but I know I've still got. For example, electronics is one of my big weaknesses. Fishing offshore, I love getting dirt shallow and fishing. Fishing hardcover, fishing grass. I know I got some work to do to be able to compete with some of these guys on offshore tournaments or where your electronics are going to be a factor. I hope to get to their level, but I'd be kind of silly to say that I'm at that level yet. So we'll see. We'll see how I do in some of these next ones.
Well, wish you the best, man. Really do, and hope
Thank you.
to see you up there in the podium on the next few tournaments, and whatever you aspire, to compete in any of the tournaments. I wanted to mention something because both you and Nate, and I'm not sure. I didn't ask. I forgot his name. Lance, I think, they got up in third place.
Mm-hmm.
Let me look up the name saying because I feel bad not pronouncing the name.
Lance
Burris. Yeah, Lance Burris. So I'm not sure what Lance Burris was fishing out of. In fact, let me see if I can see it right here on his. I can't really tell. I think he was on a bonafide. Probably was a motor, but a motor on his kayak. But anyways, the point that I wanted to make: both the top two, you and Nate, fish out of an Outback, no motor. And I like that because one of the things that for me is intimidating. I'm not against motor tournaments. I do like that Hobie is there is at least one elite event that is just manpower, and I think it should stay that way. At least one, because not everybody can afford a motor on it, and some people just like myself. I'm a little biased in the sense that I think once you take the manpower out of it and you put a motor in it, it's no longer kayak. That's my personal belief. I'm not hating on people or tournaments that allow kayak. I fished the Fork and I had no problem fishing against people that have motors. But for those out there that think that they can't compete because they don't have a motor or put that an excuse, top two anglers, both Outback, no motor, and really not a lot of use electronics because at that point you're sight fishing. Even Nate Gloria said he has a live scope, but it was useless when he came to sight fishing and looking for beds. So don't think for those out there listening that you need to have live, whatever it is, the Garmin live scope or whatever the names are for Lowrance and Humminbird. Don't feel the need that don't feel like you need to have that on your arsenal. Don't feel that you need to have a Torpedo or a Spotlock trolling motor, because evidence of that, we've seen it with both of you out there. So I think that deserves to be mentioned. The fact that you both were manpower and you both got it done. So
that's a
shout out to you guys.
It's a good point. And it feels good. But I mean, I think that's one of the beautiful things about, kayak fishing is you can make it as simple or as complex as you want. You don't need a whole lot to kind of get started and get out there and have fun doing it. And I really do think it's for getting into shallow backwater places, and there's nothing better.
Yeah, definitely. And then, of course, there's going to be tournaments out there that whether it's getting into really cold water or really warm water, then yes, a live scope and being offshore and having a spotlight does really help. And we saw that on Broken Bow. Well, actually, Broken Bow was no motors, but the live scope came into play for a lot of those anglers that were offshore. I think somebody was fishing like 80 feet of water on suspended bass on treetops at 40 feet of water. So yeah, I could see how that technology would come in place there. But again, don't feel the need that you need to have all the bells and whistles to compete. If you can afford it and you want to do it, by all means, do it. Heck, I would do it. But yeah, shout out to you guys for putting in the work and getting those results, man. I'm really proud of what you guys did, especially you, considering all the factors that were involved that were, against you. Well-earned win. I would be emotional myself after going through that roller coaster of, random things popping up and going from like losing $250 to actually making some good amount of cash, making a few thousand there. And, and being at the podium, so to speak, it has to be emotional.
And I think part of it, is Bass is an amazing organization. I really learned, how to bass fish from them, reading the magazine and every article and, the little books that they put out. To have a trophy that says Bassmaster on it is awesome.
Yeah. Kudos, man. So Justin, before I let you go, I know you here for an hour and you're still on vacation here in Texas. Glad to have you here in Texas. So I don't want to take too much time out of your vacation, but before we let you go, I know there's some people you want to thank, mainly Mariner Sales and maybe friends, family, or any company that helps you in your fishing. So go ahead and thank away.
Yeah, no sponsors at this point, but I definitely do want to thank Mariner Sales. I would not have had had the result I did without their help. So especially Duke for talking me into that Outback. Want to thank my family for supporting me. It was really great getting all the text messages from them when they saw the results post. And then I'll throw out my old employer, Intercon Security Systems. They kept me employed for 14 years, and that job allowed me to purchase an awful lot of fishing gear, some nice equipment. So I appreciate the partnership that we had for a long time.
Awesome. Where can people follow you on social media? I know we mentioned you have an Instagram page that's dedicated to photography when you're out on the water. Where can they follow you?
Yep, it's Wandering the Desert, no spaces, at Instagram. Check it out. I'll post some information on there. I'm gonna be launching a website soon where folks can purchase some of the photos if they like, and then I'll hopefully be putting out some more. I'll be getting a little more active on social media. Maybe you guys can find me a little easier next time. Yeah, man.
It's hard to find you on social media. I never met an angler that didn't like to brag about what they caught, especially after winning a tournament. But we got you on. Thank you to Dwayne Wally for getting your contact information. He texted Jimmy during the live show, and after we were done, we immediately text you. I'm like, he's probably in Virginia. It's probably too late to text him, but I'm going to text him anyways. We want to make sure, we get you on the show. And I'm glad I did. It's a super interesting story, unique story. And having nothing against, the Russ Snyders and the Kristen Fishers of the world. We loved when we cheer for them. It's nice to see that legacy being built for anglers like that. But we also like it when other people, especially with all due respect, right? No-name anglers in the sense that not known nationally get to catch a check and, be there at the podium. That's always exciting. And I think it pumps other people up that are kind of in the fence if they want to get on a tournament or not, saying, hey, man, you can do it. Just trust in your ability, trust in your skills, stick to your game and what you know, and just go out there and practice and sign up for one of those events. Worst case scenario, you get to meet a lot of great people like I did over the weekend and get a lot of information from some of those professional kayak anglers that most of them willing to share some of their secrets, not all of them, but willing to give you tips and, help you on your game. So if you're on the fence about joining a national tournament, if you have one coming close to you, go ahead, do it, and put yourself and expectations that you can win, and just have fun, meet people, get to know people around the same circle that like and have a passion for what you do, and go out there and enjoy. So anyways, Justin, thank you again for joining us. It was an honor to have you on. We hope to see you soon in other, whether it's local or national trails or elite series, and have you on the show again, talking about another big victory.
Hopefully. Thank you for having me, Armando. It's been fun.
No problem. My pleasure. And for those out there listening, if you made it this far, thank you for listening to the Bass Kayak and Beer segment, sponsored by Douglas Rods. Go to douglasoutdoors.com to check out their full lineup and find your nearest authorized dealer. Also, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook under Bass Kayak and Beers. Thank you again, everybody. Stay safe. Wear your PFDs. Have a great day. See ya.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_and_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_and_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in Northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com.